Hello everyone. Today we will discuss chapter 27, Legacy in Science and Civilization. Legacy in Science and Civilization. Okay. Religion and formation of social classes. In spite of the existence of towns in Harappan times and again for about 1,000 years from the Maurya to the Gupta period, the ancient Indian civilization was not as urban as the ancient civilizations of the Greece and Roman. The greater part of the subcontinent was hundreds of kilometers away from the sea coast, and it could not develop much trade and commerce. Indian life, therefore, remained primarily agrarian, and its people comparatively immobile in comparison with Western cultures. Religion exercised a far stronger influence in India. Every field of ancient Indian life, economy, polity, art, and literature was strongly influenced by religion. In addition to Hinduism, India gave rise to Jainism and Buddhism. Although Christianity came to this country in about the 1st century AD, it did not make much headway in ancient times. Buddhism also disappeared from India in course of time, though it had spread as far as Japan in the east and as far as Central Asia in the northwest. In the process of diffusion, Buddhism projected a good deal of Indian art, language, and literature in the neighboring areas. Religion influenced the formation of social classes in India in a peculiar way. In other ancient societies, the duties and functions of social classes were fixed by law which was largely enforced by the state. But in India, Varna laws enjoyed the sanction of both the state and religion. The functions of priests, warriors, peasants, and laborers were defined in law and supposed to have been laid down by divine agencies. Those who departed from their functions and were found guilty of offenses were subjected to secular punishments as well as the performance of rituals and penances, all differing according to the Varnas. Each Varna was not given only a social but also a ritualistic recognition. In course of time, Varnas or social classes and Jadis or caste came to be regarded as hereditary in the eyes of law and religion. All this was done to ensure that Vaishyas produce and pay taxes and Shudras serve as laborers, so that Brahmanas act as priests and Kshatriyas as rulers. They need of the need of carrying out their respective functions was so strongly ingrained in the minds of various classes that ordinarily they would never think of deviating from their dharma. The Bhagavad Gita taught that people should lay down their lives in defense of their own dharma rather than adopt the dharma of others, which is dangerous. The lower orders worked hard in the firm belief that they would deserve a better life in the next world or birth. This belief lessened the intensity and frequency of tensions and conflicts between those who actually produced and those who lived off these producers as priests, princes, priests, officials, soldiers, and big merchants. Hence, the necessity for exercising coercion against the lower orders was not so strong in ancient India. What was done by slaves and other producing sections in Greece and Rome under the threat of whip was done by the Vaishyas and Shudras out of conviction formed through Brahmanical indoctrination. Philosophical systems. The Indian thinkers looked upon the world as illusion and deliberated deeply on the relation between the soul and God. In fact, philosophers of no other country delved so deeply into this problem as the Indians did. Ancient India is considered famous for its contribution to philosophy and spiritualism. But the Indians also developed a materialistic view of the world. In the six systems of the philosophy which the Indians created, we find elements of materialist philosophy in the Sankhya system of Kapila, who was born around 580 BC. He believed that the soul can attain liberation only through real knowledge. Real knowledge can be acquired through observation, inference, and words. The Sankhya system does not recognize the existence of God. The Sankhya system does not recognize the existence of God. According to it, the world has not been created by God, but by nature, and the world and human life are regulated by natural forces. Materialist philosophy received the greatest impetus from Charvaka, who lived in about the 6th century BC. The philosophy that he propounded is known as Logayada. He argued that what is not experienced by man through his sensual organs does not really exist. It implies that God does not exist. The Indians thus developed both the idealist as well as materialist systems of philosophy. The idealist system taught that the world is an illusion and ignorance. People were asked by the Upanishads to abandon the world and to strive for real knowledge. Western thinkers have taken to the teachings of Upanishads because they are unable to solve the human problems created by modern technology. The famous German philosopher Schopenhauer finds in his system a place for the Vedas and Upanishads. He used to say that the Upanishads consoled him in this life and would also console him after death. Crafts. It would be wrong to think that the Indians did not make any progress in materialist culture. They attained proficiency in several fields of production. The Indian craftsmen were great experts in dyeing and making various kinds of colors. The basic colors made in India were so shining and lasting that the beautiful paintings of Ajanta and Ellora are still intact. Similarly, the Indians were great experts in art of making steel. This craft was developed first in India. The Indian steel was exploited to many countries of the world from very early times and came to be called woods in later times. No other country in the world could manufacture such steel swords as those made by Indian craftsmen. They were in great demand in the entire region from Asia to Europe. Polity. As regards political organization, India was the only other country with grace to make experiments in some kind of democracy. The country also produced a great ruler in Ashoka, who, in spite of his great victory over Kalinga, adopted a policy of peace and non-aggression. Ashoka and several other Indian kings practiced religious toleration and stressed that the wishes of the followers of the other religions should be respected. Science and mathematics. India made an important contribution to science. In ancient times, religion and science were inextricably linked together. Astronomy made great progress in country because the planets came to be regarded as gods and their movements began to be closely observed. Their study became essential on account of their connection with changes in seasons and weather conditions, which were important for agricultural activities. The science of grammar and linguistics arose because the ancient Brahmanas stressed that every Vedic prayer and every mantra should be recited with meticulous correctness. In fact, the first result of the scientific outlook of Indians was the production of Sanskrit grammar. In the fourth century BC, Panini systematized the rules governing Sanskrit and produced a grammar called Ashtadhyayi. Ashtadhyayi, Panini. Ashtadhyayi, a grammar by Panini. By the 3rd century BC, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine began to develop separately. In the field of mathematics, the ancient Indians made 3 distinct contributions: the notation system, the decimal system, and the use of zero. The earliest epigraphic evidence for the use of decimal system is in the beginning of the 5th century AD. The Indian notational system was adopted by the Arabs, who spread in the Western world. The Indian numerals are called Arabic in English, but the Arabs themselves called numerals Hindsa. Before these numerals appeared in the West, they had been used in India for centuries. They are found in the inscriptions of Ashoka, which were written in the 3rd century BC. The Indians were the first to use the decimal system. The most famous mathematician Aryabhatta, AD 476 to 500, was acquainted with it. The Chinese learned this system from the Buddhist missionaries, and the Western world borrowed it from the Arabs when they came in contact with India. Zero was discovered by the Indians in about the 2nd century BC. From the very beginning, the Indian mathematicians considered zero as a separate numeral, and it was used in the sense in sums of arithmetic. In Arabia, the earliest use of zero appears in AD 873. 873. The Arabs learned and adopted it from India and spread it in Europe. So far as algebra is concerned, both the Indians and Greeks contributed it. But in Western Europe, its knowledge was borrowed not from Greece but from the Arabs who had acquired it from India. In the 2nd century BC, Abhastamba produced a practical geometry for the construction of altars at which the kings could offer sacrifices. It describes acute angle, obtuse angle, right angle. Aryabhatta formulated the rule for finding the area of triangle, which led to the origin of trigonometry. The most famous work in this time is Surya Siddhanta, the like of which is not found in the contemporary ancient East. The most renowned scholars of the astronomy were Aryabhatta and Varahamihira. Aryabhatta belonged to the 5th century and Varahamihira to the 6th century. Aryabhatta calculated the position of planets according to the Babylonian method. He discovered the cause of lunar and solar eclipses. The circumference of the earth, which he measured on the basis of speculation, is considered to be correct even now. He pointed out that the sun is stationary and the earth rotates. The book of Aryabhatta is called the Aryabhatiya. Varahamihira's well-known work is called Brihat Samhita. Varahamihira, okay, which belongs to the 6th century AD. Varahamihira stated that the moon rotates round the earth and the earth rotates round the sun. He utilized several Greek works to explain the movement of the planets and some other astronomical problems. Although the Greek knowledge influenced Indian astronomy, there is no doubt that the Indians pursued the subjects further and made use of it in their observations of the planets. In the applied field, Indian craftsmen contributed much to the progress of chemistry. The Indian dyers invented lasting colors, and they also discovered the blue color. It has been already stated how the Indian smiths were the first in the world to manufacture steel. Medicine. The ancient Indian physicians studied anatomy. Okay. The ancient Indian physicians studied anatomy. They devised methods to diagnose diseases and prescribe medicines for their cure. The earliest mention of medicines in the Atharva Veda. But as in other ancient societies, the remedies recommended were replete with magical charms and spells, and medicine could not develop along scientific lines. In post-Mauryan times, India produced two famous scholars of the Ayurveda, Sushruta and Charaka. Sushruta Samhita. Sushruta describes the method of operating the cataract, stone disease, and several other ailments. He mentioned as many as 121 implements to be used for operations. In the treatment of the disease, he lays special emphasis on the diet and cleanliness. Charaka wrote the Charaka Samhita in the 2nd century AD. It is like an encyclopedia of Indian medicine. It describes various types of fever, leprosy, hysteria, mirgi, and tuberculosis. Possibly, Charaka did not know that some of these are infectious. His book contains the name of a large number of plants and herbs which were used to be as medicine. The book is thus useful not only for the study of Indian medicine but also for the ancient Indian flora and chemistry. In subsequent centuries, Indian medicine developed on the lines laid down by Charaka. Geography. Ancient Indians also made some contribution to the study of geography. They had little knowledge of the geography of the lands outside India, but the rivers, mountain ranges, place of pilgrimage, and different regions of the country are described in the epics and Puranas. Although the Indians were acquainted with China and Western countries, they never had any clear idea of where they lay, nor of their distances from India. In early times, the ancient Indians obtained some knowledge of navigation and they contributed to the craft of shipbuilding. But since important political powers had their seats of power far away from the coast, and since there was no danger from the seaside, the ancient Indian princes did not pay any particular attention to navigation. Art and literature. The ancient Indian masons and craftsmen produced beautiful works of art. The monolithic pillars erected by the Ashoka are famous for their shining polish, which matches with the polish of northern black polished layer. It is still a mystery how the craftsman could achieve this kind of polish on pillars and pottery. The Mauryan polished pillars were mounted by statues of animals, especially lions. The lion capital has been adopted as the national emblem of the government of India. We may also refer the cave temples of Ajanta as well as famous Ajanta paintings, which go back to the beginning of the Christian era. In a way, Ajanta is the birthplace of Asian art. It contains as many as 30 cave temples constructed between the 2nd century BC and 7th century AD. The paintings appeared in the 2nd century AD, and the most of them belong to Gupta times. Their themes were borrowed from stories about previous incarnations of the Buddha and from ancient literature. The achievement of Indian painters at Ajanta has been lauded by all art connoisseurs. The lines and colors used at Ajanta display a proficiency which is not found in the world before the Renaissance in Europe. Indian art, moreover, was not limited to India. It spread to Central Asia and China at one end and to Southeast Asia on the other. The focal point for the spread of Indian art into Afghanistan and neighboring part of the Central Asia was Gandhara. Elements of Indian art were fused with those Central Asian and Hellenistic art, giving rise to a new art called the Gandhara style. The first statue of Buddha was fashioned in this style, Gandhara style. Okay, the first statue of Buddha was fashioned in Gandhara style. Although its features are Indian, the size and presentation of the head and the drapery show Greek influence. Okay. Similarly, the temples constructed in South India served in some ways as models for the construction of temples in Southeast Asia. We have already referred to the temple at Angkor Wat in Cambodia and the temple at Borobudur in Java. In the field of education, we may refer to the huge monastic establishment of Nalanda. It attracted students not only from different parts of India, but also from Tibet and China. The standards of examination were stiff, and only those who could pass the test prescribed by Dwara Pandita or the scholar at the gate could be admitted to the university. Nalanda is one of the earliest examples of residential come teaching institution which housed thousands of monks devoted to learning philosophy and meditation. Learning, philosophy, and meditation. In the field of literature, the Indians produced Rig Veda, which is the earliest specimen of Indo-Aryan literature, and on the basis of which an attempt has been made to determine the nature of the Aryan culture. In Gupta times, we have the works of Kalidasa, the play whose play Abhignana Shakuntalam has been translated into all important languages of the world. So we have completed Ancient India by R.S. Sharma, which is an old NCERT. So we have completed Ancient India holistically. Thank you for listening me. We'll see you in the next series of other subjects. Thank you very much